This is 805 Living Eats, a podcast from 805 Living magazine covering food and flavor on California's Central Coast. I'm food columnist Jaime Lewis, and I'm so glad you're tuning in. For this episode, I'm talking with someone who has the job we all dream of having. Josephine Lochhead is president of Cook's Flavoring Company in Paso Robles, which deals in high-end vanilla. Yes, vanilla, the most beloved flavor and aroma on earth, and Josephine is surrounded by it day in and day out. A third-generation owner of the company, Josephine travels around the world to search for and tend to the finest vanilla beans available. Learn more about the mysterious and exotic orchid, how it's grown, pollinated, cured, and packaged as the common baking ingredient we know in our own recipes. Here's my fascinating conversation with Josephine Lochhead of Cook's Flavoring Company. Josephine Lochhead, it's so nice to see you and talk to you finally in person.
Yes, I'm so thrilled to be here with you, Jaime.
We talked a while back about what it takes to bring vanilla from bean to bottle. You say that a lot, I know. And when we spoke, it was evident that you have a ton of passion for this product. I mean, it's not the pithy soundbite. You really care about what you do.
Yes, it's a passion. It's been our family passion for 102 years. And it's not just that we're in the industrial grade vanilla. We're in this special niche of super high quality vanilla, which is not always easy to come by.
Yeah.
But it's our passion to keep that traditional vanilla alive and well, and for us all to enjoy.
So tell the listeners what the difference is between like an industrial grade vanilla and what you make.
Okay, so it starts with the vanilla bean. A vanilla bean in itself is a very fascinating, it comes from the orchid. It's hand pollinated on the day it blooms. And then it must stay on the vine for 9 months, and that's the critical time. Most vanilla is picked immature, so because when it's on the vine in Madagascar, it's subject to theft, and especially when prices are high. So to get the farmers to keep it on the vine is very difficult. Everything goes against a ripe vanilla bean. So not only are the green immature beans heavier, but because vanilla is by weight, there's a holiday in Madagascar, and so the farmers want to pick their beans early for that. So it's kind of like wine. If you pick the vanilla too soon, it lacks a lot of flavor. It has a lot of problems. So if you were to pick your grapes in June, you wouldn't have very good wine. Right. So when you pick vanilla immaturely, it doesn't have good flavor. So that's one difference. Industrial grade vanilla it's picked immature. Usually they use cuts, which are the leftover beans that are thrown out during the curing process. And it has a hot percolation. So it's percolated, extracted under high temperatures and pressure. So you end up with a one-dimensional vanilla. On the other hand, like our vanilla, it's on the vine for at least 9 months. We try for 10. And then you have these beautiful ripe split vanilla beans. They're all cured by hand traditionally. It's interesting. Every vanilla bean that is cured properly is handled over 200 times. And vanilla loves the human touch. If it's thrown to machines, it doesn't work. It has no flavor. It's like a dry stick. But when it's cured and handled and bundled and sorted, it gets this beautiful, full aroma. It has over 300 flavoring compounds in it. And then once that vanilla is cured in Madagascar, it's shipped here to Paso Robles. And we again inspect it, and then we do a cold percolation. So it's very gentle percolation, and so we capture all 310 of those aromatics, and you get this beautiful full bouquet. So a lot goes into it. It's not what everyone says plain vanilla. There's really nothing plain about it.
No, not at all. I mean, when you talk about the hand pollination, that was the thing that really got me, because you said something like the orchid blossoms one time a year.
Correct.
And you have to pollinate it before the blossom falls off.
Right, and that's before noon on the day it blooms.
So it has what, like a...
You literally have probably a 10-hour window to pollinate.
And are you just watching the whole time? You just watching
Well,
these things
the farmers have little plots. So vanilla is grown on little plots. It doesn't even like large, industrial plantations that they call them. Mm-hmm. It likes to be grown in plots. If it's grown in large areas, it gets root rot. That's another interesting thing. Or in greenhouses, it gets root rot. So the farmers on these little plots, they know, they're in their plantation every day, and they're looking for the vanilla. And they know, okay, that one's going to be ready tomorrow. And it grows it blooms in clusters. So the clusters will bloom, like one blossom will bloom one day, 3 days later, another one. And so they know. And it's very important. They want to pollinate, as many blossoms as they can.
And they have to pollinate it with something specific.
Yeah, so they have a little stick, and there, it's, you get into the botany of the flower, but you pull the stamen back and then you pinch the pollen together to get that hand pollination. And when you pollinate it correctly because the flower just wilts right away. And then within a week, you start seeing that bean. Yeah. And a good pollinator can pollinate 1,500 blossoms a day.
A human pollinator.
Yes.
Yes.
Now the only insect in the world that will pollinate is the Melipona bee, and that is in Mexico. It's indigenous to Mexico. Vanilla is, and even the Melipona bee only pollinates about 70% of the blossoms. So all vanilla in the world is hand pollinated, even in Mexico.
But we don't think of vanilla as being a Mexican export. We don't. I mean, I don't anyway. I think of it in Tahiti. I think of it in Madagascar. I think of it in just different places than that. Can you talk a little bit about why it wound up in Madagascar, Tahiti, and the like?
Yeah, that's really interesting. So in Madagascar, it's a fun story, or in Mexico, the Aztecs grew it, and they called it a gift of the gods. Well, Cortez showed up, and Montezuma thought he was a white god. He had the beard, and so he served Cortez on the gold and silver platters and plates, and this huge meal. And Cortez just thought, well, I want to get into this man's treasure chest. So he killed Montezuma, got into his treasure chest, and found cocoa beans and vanilla beans. And
buddies forever.
Yeah, and so Cortez took those vanilla beans back to Europe, and the French fell in love with them. And so they went to their French colonies in the Indian Ocean. At that time, they were called the Bourbon Islands. That's where bourbon vanilla comes from. And they tried to grow this vanilla, and they had beautiful vines, healthy vines, flowers, and they never got a vanilla bean. And this went on for 500 years, so they called it the Curse of Montezuma.
500 years of trying to do something.
Yeah, never a vanilla bean. And so finally a French botanist was sent there, and he discovered that there's no insect to pollinate. Mm-hmm. The vanilla, most of it's grown in Madagascar. It's so labor intensive. It's always grown in very poor areas, and Mexico...
Financially.
In Madagascar, the wage is $1 a day. So even Mexico cannot compete. And so Madagascar basically took over the market from Mexico. And then Tahiti is also another niche market. There's not much grown in Tahiti either, but mainly for tourism. Madagascar... right now probably produces 80% of the world's vanilla.
Wow.
When the price goes up, production goes to, right now it's going to Papua New Guinea. In the past it's been in Indonesia. But Madagascar by default ends up with the vanilla production in the world.
How did your family get started doing this very unique, distinctive business?
Well, my grandfather came from Scotland, and he was a great salesman, and he decided to settle in Missouri, St. Louis, because it was the center of the country, and he sold the first ballpoint pens. And then he then started working for a flavor company, and he he thought, I want to make my own vanilla. So he started his own vanilla company in St. Louis in 1918. And then he had 4 sons. My father was one, and he went to Caltech, studied chemistry. There's a lot of chemistry in the flavor business. And then he loved California, so we moved our production here to Paso Robles.
So interesting. So his legacy really has been a family business. You all, I know, are involved. I remember reading way back, maybe even like 10 years ago. I remember reading about your business, and you had a blog that was written by is it your niece?
Yes,
okay.
Susanna,
who's a fantastic writer. And I remember reading a post where she said something about she had gone over to Madagascar, I think it was. Maybe it was Tahiti. But in customs, she opened up her bag, and the smell, the aroma of vanilla wafted up, and it made a grown man, like a TSA agent, cry, because it was like reminded him of home, something like that. I will never forget that story. So talk about kind of like I don't know, what is it like to go over and bring this stuff back?
Oh, that is such a good question, because you do. So, we're immersed in vanilla here in Paso Robles, and we're the only ones.
Yeah.
But when you travel to these regions and you find other people who it's their life as well, you have this immediate connection. And, especially in Madagascar, in Sambov, that's where we work. It's a vanilla capital of Madagascar. Like you walk on the beach during curing season, and you get this, these whiffs of vanilla. Oh. And you walk the streets, and you get this whiffs of vanilla. So when you smell it somewhere where it's like not in our factory, and you're working with all of these people who love vanilla and it's their life, you have this immediate connection. And the vanilla region, it's like it takes over the entire region. We've also worked in the South Pacific and Tonga and Fiji, parts of Indonesia, and it's always the same. You have this immediate camaraderie with fellow vanilla people.
Amazing. And you travel all over the world year long.
Yeah. So I traveled to Madagascar, and we work directly with farmers and villagers for organic vanilla. We help them with their needs, and then they give us those right vanilla beans. We have a plantation in Fiji that's not operating now, but we're thinking about getting that going. When we have the time. And we've worked in Tonga. I've traveled to Indonesia, Papua New Guinea. It's very unusual. Papua New Guinea's, wow, it's a different world there, as well as Madagascar. So it's very exotic.
Yeah. But it's something that's so common, especially this time of year, as people are baking, getting ready for the holidays. To think of this flavor as exotic, when you're making chocolate chip cookies, it's a really interesting mix and tension there.
Yes. And just all of the work that goes into that ball of vanilla. I mean, it takes 2 years from the time you're pollinating until the time you have that extract, and so many people and so much care and passion that goes into that ball of vanilla. And so it is, when you add it, you're adding this flavor that everybody in the world loves. It's the only flavor that's loved universally.
Yeah.
And in fact, we all have a sensor in our brain for vanilla, which is remarkable. And so it's special, and it's like the Aztecs said, it's a gift from the gods. It's so remarkable.
And as you talk about walking through cities and smelling it, being on the beach and smelling it, I can't think of a single time I've ever been like, I'm sick of smelling vanilla.
Exactly.
Never.
Yeah, and it's, wherever you go, people love it.
Yeah.
And the other interesting thing about it is that wherever it's grown, it has this folklore, and they already, whether you're in Madagascar, Papua New Guinea, or Indonesia, they refer to vanilla as the queen of the rainforest. She's the woman, and if you ignore her, she will go bad, they say. Wow. And so it requires such everyday care, and especially during curing season, you don't you don't take your eyes off of the vanilla. And then oftentimes, last 4 or 5 years, it's been so valuable that it's always under armed guard. When we transport it, we transport it under armed guard. At night, it's always guarded by human beings.
As though it were like diamonds or something.
Yes, yeah. So it's very it's highly valued in these other countries.
Well, so tell me a little bit about then how you at Cooks, how you have, you have multiple different lines. You have specifically a baking line, I think. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And there are 2 different species of vanilla. There's the Tahitian, the Tahitensis, and then there's the bourbon or the planifolia. So the Tahitian vanilla has it has a very floral characteristic, and it has like a punch it gives you. So if you add it to something, you can actually taste it. The bourbon planifolia vanilla enhances the ingredients. So you can't really, it's like salt. You can't taste it. If it's not there, you miss it.
But it boosts.
Right, it boosts the flavor. So we'll do a lot of blends of the two that are beautiful. And then also we do regionals. So like we do get a little Mexican vanilla and, different regions, and every region is kind of like grapes, has a little different characteristic to it. So we'll do blends of that. We do alcohol free. We have vanilla powders. So there, we have a full line of vanilla, and it's really fun to be in this business, and you can be creative with it as well.
I really liked when you talked about the vanilla powders, the fact that it's kind of more concentrated, right? When you're baking with it.
Yeah, because it has no alcohol, it doesn't evaporate in the oven, so all the flavor stays in your baked goods. It's also good to use as a condiment. So it's a different form, and it's fun. It's good to put in beverages. It's the little shaker jar at that famous coffee shop that we all know.
Oh, that's right. That famous coffee shop. And we really do all know it.
It's on just about every corner.
Sometimes 2 on one corner.
In fact, when that little coffee shop started in Seattle, they called me and they said they wanted to order 1 pound. And I was so busy that day. It was like,
They only wanted 1 pound?
Yeah, they had one little coffee shop in
Right.
Seattle. And so I was like, oh, do I have to get this out? And I thought, well, okay, I'll get it out. So I shipped it, and the rest is history.
I'm glad you got to that you were able to ship it.
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
it was good I took the time to do that. You never know.
No, you don't. So for 805 listeners, 805 Living readers, where can they find Cook's Vanilla around, the Central Coast?
Okay, so in Paso Robles, we have it at the General Store and also Spice of Life, and then the Paso Robles Health Food Store. And then here in San Luis, you can find it at the Health Food Store off of Broad.
Yes.
And
The co-op.
The
Slow Food
co-op.
Co-op.
That's
Yep.
it, Slow Food Co-op. And we're working on more distribution locally. So hopefully in the next year, you'll see it available in more locations.
Yeah, because it's blowing up. Because it's successful everywhere you go.
And obviously you love it. You can tell the difference and the
Yeah.
care and attention that goes into it.
And you recently had, this packaging is so beautiful. I'm holding in my hand one of the extract bottles, and it's so beautiful. You just had a brand refresh.
We did, and we used Makers and Allies here in San Luis Obispo, and they are fabulous. And we worked hard on this. It was a good 1.5 year project, and it was a fun project. So we're hoping that the label now conveys what's in the bottle.
I think it does.
Yeah.
Okay, I have one final question for you. When you go on your next trip, can I come?
Yes. I love to have companions. I love it. And it's going to Madagascar. It's just such an experience, and I would love to have you join me. It would be fun.
All right. Well, now it's on record.
Fun girls trip.
Oh, Josephine, thank you for all your work. Thank you for carrying on your family's business and for telling us about something we never would have known.
Oh, well, thank you, Jamie. And thank you for your time and for letting me tell our story. I get a thrill every time I tell it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of 805 Living Eats. Have a look at the December 2020 issue of 805 Living magazine to find unique recipes from Cook's Vanilla, like a recipe for halibut on papillote with vanilla sauce. 805 Living Eats is hosted by me, Jaime Lewis, and edited by Chris Lambert. Until next time, stay safe and eat well this holiday season.